Let's open up the Black Series Archive 6-inch figure of Dengar. Varykino. If it's Star Wars, we collect it. Hello there, thanks for visiting Varykino. One of my New Year's resolutions is to stop hoarding figures that I know I want to open. So many times I get a new figure, I bring it home and I store it away to open up later and I inevitably forget about them. So I'm not doing that anymore. I'm charging right in and opening them up. So I'm going through my Black Series Archive figures that I picked up quite a while ago and I'm opening them all up. And today I have Dengar. So of course Dengar is a bounty hunter. He was featured in that Empire Strikes Back lineup of iconic bounty hunters. While we don't see Dengar doing much in the Empire Strikes Back, that lineup of bounty hunters was just so iconic. It's a really fun lineup and iconic for collectors to recreate in whichever format you like to collect. So I'm hoping to eventually get all of the bounty hunters all lined up for my Black Series collection. And of course that means I need to get Dengar out of the packaging. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Coming up really soon, we'll get the figure out and we'll go over all of his details and accessories. But first, let's take a quick look at the backing card. The packaging style for the Black Series Archive line consists of a rectangular cardboard backing card and a large clear rectangular bubble here on the front. In keeping with the Black Series design style, we have black across the top and down the left. We have the Star Wars, the Black Series logo here on the top right, a cutout for the hanger, and we also have an angular cutout along the left-hand side, which is mirrored with this cut-off corner of the front plastic bubble. We've got the character title, Dengar, in a large readable font here along the left-hand side. And behind the character, we have a light grey panel, which extends to the right-hand side of the backing card, where we have the archive line text there. We can see Dengar packaged with a variety of accessories. He has a blaster rifle, a blaster pistol, and his backpack there. We also have a small cardboard artwork insert here with black and white artwork of Dengar from the Empire Strikes Back. Moving on to the back, we've got that artwork here, again, a little bit larger, a little bit more cropped in, and we have a little bit of a history section here for the original version of this figure, because the archive line are of course reissues of older figures. He originally was released in 2018, where we still had that black squared off box style for the Black Series line. The asterisk here notes that it is no longer available, which I think is kind of interesting. We can see the year there printed, 2018. We also have a character blurb for the character of Dengar. Crude and slovenly, Dengar was nonetheless an effective bounty hunter. While some hunters prided themselves on finesse and style, Dengar preferred firepower and destruction. And that is repeated in a few different languages there. The rest of the backing card is copyright barcode, all of that kind of stuff. Overall, it's a very nice package, but I really want to finally recreate a lineup of bounty hunters, so I need to get them out of the packaging, so let's get stuck in. So now I have the Dengar figure and all of his accessories out of the packaging, so we can get stuck in and check out his details. And he has a lot. He has quite complex armor and there's a lot of details here, a lot of paint, a lot of sculpting. So this is going to be a lot of fun, lots to go over. So of course he's got a really distinctive armor outfit made of sort of other identifiable pieces from Imperials and some unique pieces. There is just a lot to go over. So of course now we can see the back of the figure. It's always a little bit hidden when they're in the packaging. It's a little bit more plainer here on the back. We've got that sort of backpack to add in there shortly as well, but wow. So of course he is a reissue figure, as of course the archive line is, so he does have that older articulation style with the two sort of pegs, those pins through the knee, but we do just have sort of the slightly more modern style here in the elbows rather than two pins there. That's nice. Some really nice paintwork here. Of course he's got his sort of brown tone, very dark tone armor here on the front, which is accented with sort of that metallic weathering in places, which is really nice to see. Lots of extra painted details. I'm seeing some really nice sculpting details, like on the pouch that we have here hanging from the belt. And it looks like that wrapping around his head, that looks like that's actually two pieces. It is sculpted separately to the face and assembled so that we'd get some really nice digital printing around the eyes rather than sort of being obscured a little bit by this, because of course the printing technology would have a hard time getting in that if it was all sculpted together. So while I'm here, let's go straight in and go over the head details. So hopefully you can sort of see this on camera. The wrapping wrapping around his head is in two parts. So we've got the face, then we've got this white wrapping section around here. We can sort of see it sort of sculpted to cross over, a little bit of gray here, there at the corner, and it kind of comes really close, kind of hangs over his left eye a little bit there, covers around the left and wraps around. So you can kind of see here in the back, we've got a little bit of a sculpting cutout that continues all the way around, sort of at the top there. There is a little bit of a plastic difference. So to my eyes, I can't tell for sure. This top section almost looks like it's painted because it's a subtly different color to the plastic here. This plastic looks, it's got that sort of shine to it that looks like plastic, and then we've got these little sort of stud details painted over the top, but this section looks like it's painted to try and match the color of this plastic. Under certain lighting I can sort of see the color difference. It's a little less easy to see when you sort of put them back. When I'm looking up close up, I can really see the difference. And paint has a slightly different sort of finish to it. It's sometimes you can just tell what is a shiny plastic finish and what is paint, and I can just see that there. Nevertheless, I think it's really nice. Of course, assembling all of these pieces around the head sculpt, they probably have to do it in multiple parts. This tucks in around the chin quite nicely. There is a little bit of a lip down here underneath his chin, so I can imagine that it would just be very complicated to get that all in together. So of course I do see the necessity for two parts. I'm just not sure why they didn't make this top part out of the same plastic here, so it would be a little bit closer together, but it looks pretty cool. There's even some sort of stitching and fabric texture to the sculpting here, which is really nice. And of course, if I'm going to talk about the sculpting and painting, we have to talk about Dengar's face. Of course, he has his iconic scarring on his face, and we have some really nice painting here. He's got really nicely defined eyes, even a little bit of the eyebrows that are not covered up by those wrappings. And of course, he's got this quite vibrant red scarring painting here. So it's not subtle. You can really see the red there. But really nice. I do like the expression. Of course, I can't speak too much about whether this is like a really true likeness to the character, sort of the actor performer, but I think it's a good expression. Just sort of a little bit serious, and just really shows off the scarring there. Quite nice. And it's kind of fun to see that little bit of grey hair poking out there in the corner, and turns his head really nicely. Sometimes when you've got these sort of, not quite helmets, but you know, details around the head, sometimes it can really get in the way of how well the character can turn their heads. You can see his neck is skin tone there. Not too much front and back, but still pretty reasonable considering how much detail we've got around, especially at the back of the head here. So I can tip him backwards and forwards, and he turns quite freely. That's not actually touching much. I have to kind of press his head really quite forward to actually make that chin touch his armor there. So he turns nice and clear, so that's really nice. Moving down, of course, we've got his sort of big bulky chest armor plate here in the sort of dark brown. It's not quite a metallic finish, it's almost, but yeah, it's mostly just that sort of dark brown. But we've got the silver weathering, like it's been scratched in battle on the front piece. A lot of really fine detail in the sculpting on the chest plate here. That's really nice to see. And of course, it's got that sort of a trim lip around the edge there. We've got an abdomen plate there with lots of paneling as well. No weathering that I can spot on that abdomen plate. If I tip it back, I can just see the white sort of plastic of his flight suit underneath there. And of course, we have this rubbery sort of belt. Now, it doesn't actually move much. You can see I can sort of wiggle it at the sides, but you might be able to see that there's actually a peg built into the belt that is actually keeping it in place. I think you can sort of see that perhaps a little bit better on the underside. A little bit hard to show, but there is a peg in the bottom of that belt keeping it centered. So this is not going to shift. It's actually attached firmly to the abdomen plate there. And it goes all the way around the back. Not as much detail there on the back, but you can see the actual texture on it. It really does look like a webbing belt, which is really nice. And it doesn't have an anchor peg in the back, so you can sort of fidget with that one in the back there, move it around, kind of get it into the placement that you want. You can actually shift it down a little bit, but it is anchored just underneath the buckle there on the front. I don't see much in the way of sort of paint details on the rest of this. It looks like it is cast in that grey plastic. plastic, but when you catch the light, that front belt buckle is metallic. Under certain lights, it kind of blends in with the gray of the belt, but that belt buckle is painted in a metallic finish there. It's quite nice. And then of course we've got a brown pouch hanging off the belt here on his right side, and a holster hanging down even below that as well. Got some nice cutouts there, cut out across the top and down there as well. Nice two-tone browns as well, really giving a lot of depth here. And we've got another pouch here on the other hip as well, on his left hip. Some really nice textures on these as well. They're not just flat plastic. Everything's looking really rich and detailed. And now we have the cod piece just with a little bit of silver weathering. And I really like the fact that the paint finish continues very consistently down to the thighs and calves here as well. Sometimes with different sort of painting techniques, or sometimes some sections are cast in a color of plastic and some are painted. You get a little bit of a mismatch as you sort of move down the body, but this all looks like it is made from the same, or either painted the same or the same plastic. I believe it's the same plastic, just because there's that really fine sort of speckle in places which you tend to get from certain plastics. So I think this is like the brown plastic that this is all sort of made from. So it's really nice and consistent there. We've got a little bit of silver weathering here on the thighs. I think we've got maybe just a little bit of white paint creeping up on the inner thigh here at the front, because of course if this is cast in dark plastic, then the flight suit underneath is going to be painted white. I think that is actually white from the flight suit, not silver just creeping in there, because that looks white to my eyes. And we do have a little bit of silver weathering on the knee plates for the calves there as well. So oftentimes if there is weathering down the front of a figure, Hasbro doesn't often put it down the back of a figure, and we can see that that is the case for Dengar. We have no silver weathering on the dark brown armor pieces that we can see from the back. I can really see the speckling in the plastic on this back plate here. When I sort of catch the light, I can just see that speckle. So I'm fairly certain that is a dark brown plastic. And no weathering on this shoulder plate or this bracer, and same for the other side. So it's mostly just down that front. Sometimes it really bothers me, sometimes it really stands out that there is weathering sort of missing on certain areas, because he has so much detail going on and he's got this sort of contrast between light and dark. It doesn't really bother me too much. He's just got so much going on. It's just sort of the added touch to have the weathering. Of course, his armors are sort of, you know, a bit assembled, so I really like that kind of battle-worn aspect to it. Taking a look at some of the other sort of painted and sculpted details, he's got those sort of ridges on his shoulder straps coming into the back here. We've even got these sort of little painted sections like it's attached to the back. Of course, we've got that asymmetrical cutout for the peg for his backpack, which we'll put on there shortly. We do have a painted strap, because this is sort of supposed to be attached to his chest plate, but we're running across here. This is white plastic, so the brown part has to be painted. And we've got these interesting little cutouts, which I think are going to be for the straps on his backpack, because they do look very intentional, like they are designed for some tiny little pegs. So I'm hoping that that will be not too fiddly to put together there. I like the texture on that as well. We've got some little straps going on here that are unpainted. I assume that is supposed to be sort of the fabric of the flight suit coming in to attach to this sort of a back plate here, because these parts here are unpainted. Don't often see Dengar from the back in live action, so I'm not too sure if that is supposed to be painted or accurate to the color of his undersuit. And of course, like many Mandalorians, of course he's not a Mandalorian, but the same sort of style of sort of flight suit, and then this sort of vest to mount the chest plate on. We've got that here again. You can kind of see this section forming the bit of the vest, and then we've sort of got the flight suit sort of underneath here, because we're going to have the articulation going on there. Yeah, that's going to be fun to sort of work with poses there. I'm not sure how he's going to sort of balance. I do get a little bit worried with the characters that have long blaster rifles, long staff weapons, and a backpack. It's going to be interesting to see, because I'm really hoping that this is going to be enough to make sure that I can find the center of gravity so he doesn't fall over for posing. So down the back, this is where it starts to stand out a little bit to me when I'm looking up close up. So of course, because this is cast in the plastic, they've had to paint the the flight suit sections, and this is where you can really start to see the painted elements to it. And it's a little bit tricky trying to do a light color paint over a dark color base. Sometimes it shows through, and we do have a little bit of sections where it hasn't completely covered completely, and we do actually have a couple of what look like air bubbles that come through in the paint there. They're just kind of making these little, kind of like small little holes in the paint where it looks like an air bubble has kind of risen there, because they're trying to put the paint on thick to really cover the armor under there. We've just got a tiny little wobble where the paint's gone a little bit further over than perhaps it should. You can kind of see some of the paint coming in a bit thick here in the back, but it is on the back, and generally speaking, I don't like looking at this section on the 2-pin knee style articulation, just because it's this really awkward, quite deep cut in, and especially when you start moving the articulation, it looks very robotic, and it kind of draws the eye away from all of the sculpting details, and it starts to really focus on just the sort of the articulation aspects of it. And I do find these ones are very tight. I can generally articulate the top sort of peg attachment point, and then the bottom one, it's almost not worth having. It cuts into the articulation, and this guy is really stiff. I'm going to have a bit of a tough time moving those, but let's get stuck in and check out the articulation. Overall, really like the paint. Oh, of course, he also has light gray gloves, so this section here has to be painted, because I believe this section is probably actually those braces are painted. Now that I'm looking closer, I can see by the ridge of this section that this is cast in the same sort of pale color plastic as his flight suit, which means these braces are painted. You can just see there, the paint hasn't quite covered all the way to the edge of the braces there. That didn't catch my eye. That's a really good paint match, because I didn't spot that initially. And I guess the same must be true for the shoulders. That's interesting. I'm going to be looking at this all closer up to see if there are other elements that are painted versus... That's really quite cool. Yeah, okay, so the arm pieces are painted. Wow, that's a really impressive color match. I should have spotted that. Nice. Wow, I've certainly come across some ones where it really stands out, where they've really tried to match paint to plastic, and it doesn't quite work. There's sometimes a finish to it, but those were really nice. So we've got just the cuffs to those sort of gloves painted to match. Again, here you can just kind of make out the color difference between the painted cuff and the plastic of the gloves, but that's a pretty good match. Not too bad. Okay, let's check out his articulation, and then we'll get his accessories on. So of course I already checked out his head. Nice movement there. We're going to test out that chest. So front and back, pretty good. I really like the fact that it's completely hidden under his chest plate. That's a big perk for the armored characters. For the Black Series line, you can really hide that mid-torso one. Of course, they don't usually move around sort of at the hips or at the belt section there. So, ooh, tight to the side. Oh, that's a much easier turn. But tight this way. He kind of has a sticking point about there, but he can turn to his right side very easily. And that's actually far more sort of a front and back movement than I was expecting, considering we've got these sort of big armor plates. I'm not sure how much I'm going to tip him to the back once he gets his backpack on, though. That's really going to limit, because sometimes if you do that, you're going to ping it out, because we've just got that simple peg attachment point. We'll test that soon. Okay, his arms. So he's actually got quite cut in. Sometimes some characters, their sleeves of jackets and tunics kind of come out quite high, or sometimes they've got sort of armor plates over the shoulders that kind of come here, and it really restricts how well we can move the arms. But the sculpting for this one cuts all the way in to follow the path of his shoulder straps from his chest armor, so it's really quite narrow, which should mean, even though he's got sculpted shoulder plates, I should be able to get his arm up. Those are quite big shoulder plates, and they're not separate. They are... Oh no, okay. Oh, so that is plastic. Wow, that's such a tight fit. Okay, I'm all over the place. I thought this was perhaps sculpted as a one piece with this upper part there because of this strap that's painted. I should have tested that. That is actually a rubber that's attached with a peg. Wow. Okay. Usually when they are attached like that, they flex when you move the arm up, because they're usually sort of attached at a slightly different point. So when you start moving them, they will flex out of the way. They don't feel like rubber. I gotta say, that's a really interesting texture. Usually you can really tell what's rubbery. Like this is completely solid. This felt solid. That didn't feel rubbery at all. That completely had me fooled. Wow, okay, so that is cast as a plastic. That's not painted, but it's a different plastic to this. Wow, Dengar's full of surprises. He's got so many details. You can see the articulation style on the underside of his arm. Let's just test out. Okay, I can get his arm quite high. His armor plate's starting to look a little bit odd because it's not sort of sitting towards the back. Of course, that wouldn't, your shoulders don't quite invert like that, but you can swing it all the way around. Looking quite fun there. Okay, and he's got pretty good articulation there at the elbows there. That's nice. Nice easy movement there. He's got really good rockers on his wrists, I have to say. Sometimes with these cuffs, it can really come close around the hand. We don't get a lot of side to side. You can see how easily that is to rock side to side. You can see the articulation there a little bit, and of course it can also rotate. He does have a slightly separate trigger finger for holding on to blaster weapons. You can see it is sculpted there. It is not separate on his left hand. It's sculpted together there. So we'll test out how well this hand can grip for the long blaster rifle. So this one is a front and back rather than side to side. That's actually a really good, that's quite a strong amount of flex there in that wrist. Yeah, that's awesome. Considering we've got the cuff detail there, I was really expecting not to get much flex at all there. So because he's got that awesome long blaster rifle, I'm really hoping that the flexibility in these wrists is going to get us some cool poses. Okay, so let's move at the hips. So the hips on this one, they're quite exposed, and I'm generally not a fan of that. You can see just how much of a cut-in we have. We can see that it looks very toy-like. If I sort of flex his legs out to the side, you can see the articulation style there on the inner leg. Generally speaking, often figures have some kind of detail to obscure that a little bit, like a tunic or something like that. This is really good flexibility, but there's just, you kind of lose a little bit of detail in plastic by having them so cut out. So it's a little bit of a sort of a balance there. You sort of trade off some of the detail and sort of more real world look for good flexibility, because he might be able to do some really cool sort of, maybe we'll try some kneeling poses, because of course we've got these two knee parts. So finally getting that one to move, very tight. These are painted, and sometimes I find that the paint can just add that extra tiny extra layer that just provides a lot of resistance for flexing at these joints. So you can see just how tight we can flex through the knee, because we've got those two pegs there, and we've got that sort of floating kneecap here in the front, but it means that he can really flex his legs. I don't like the way that this style of articulation looks viewed from the front, but if you want to do some really cool poses, it does allow you to get some really deep flexing through the legs there. Kind of puts this knee plate really far forward, because it's really flexing away from where the knee is. With this particular joint in particular, it's just moving that quite a fair distance away from the knee, which looks a little bit awkward, but we do get a bit of a trade-off with the flexibility. So really fun there. Okay, just testing. Yeah, just a lot of movement. That's really quite nice. Sometimes when we get these high peaks on the thigh armor, it can really sort of come quite close to the top here, so you don't get much movement, but we've got a little bit of a gap there. So you can really see the sort of the white or cream sort of undersuit plastic there, and it's sort of just a little bit of a contrast to the paint there. You can just sort of see that and that looking a little bit different. But I understand if you want the brown armor plates to be cohesive, you've got to use paint. I do understand it, but got some nice paint here on the strapping around the calves of the lower legs. That looks reasonably tidy. It follows the sculpting lines pretty well. from what I can see. No sort of major spilling there. And of course we've got his soft shoes here in a different plastic. No paint effects on that, but some really nice sculpting there. And of course with this we can get some really deep points on his ankle there as well, all the way down and a little bit to the front as well. So yeah, lots of movement there with the knees. That should be really fun for doing some poses. I know if you're trying to recreate the scene from Empire Strikes Back, they're just going to be standing there. They don't really need too much flexibility, but you know, maybe you want to do some cool sort of, you know, expanded universe scenes. You know, Dengar is featured in many other source materials, not just a live action, so it's kind of fun. You can, you know, create your own scene, so that's fun that he's got a lot of flexibility there. Yeah, wow, I was not expecting those shoulders to be, they're so close, and this one is so tight. I've never seen a shoulder bell that tight. I honestly thought that was fully sculpted. That is really incredible. A lot of times you can see from a mile away when the shoulder bells are rubbery because they sort of sit and float. They have like an attachment peg somewhere, but that is so tight. That's so cool. Wow, he is really coming together nicely. And I got to say, he's a little bit top heavy, but because he's got those flat soled shoes, he does stand up a little bit more sturdy than I thought he would. But of course we've got some accessories to test out, so yeah, so much cool detail on them. Really fun. Okay, it's kind of, you know, a shame that I've left some of these figures in their packaging for so long, because they really do, they really shine when you get them out and check out all of the details. So taking a look at his backpack for the first time, wow, this has so much detail on it. This looks really cool. Okay, so we've got this sort of coiled, kind of like a bedroll, a sort of a fabric section here. You can sort of see that it's rolled up here. We've got an interesting texture on it, and that is painted sort of like a dark green. We have sort of a silver metallic grill here with a bit of brown detail around the sides. There is a small buckle detail in here. The buckle itself is painted brown along with the strap, which runs down here. We've got these little straps running down here. Again, another tiny little buckle detail. We've got another strap sort of holding a metallic silver sort of bowl or sort of canister of sorts here. We've got the sort of almost like a chain detail wrapped around it. That's so cool. And then we've got these straps here. So I just want to take a look. They do have very tiny little pegs on the ends of them. So I am assuming that these are supposed to sort of flex open and sort of rest in place with these little pegs with the tiny little cutouts that I spotted on Dengar's side. So hopefully that's all going to line up. Sometimes when it comes to straps and things like this, it works well in theory, but actually getting the 3D objects to play together can be another trick. So of course we have this sort of stepped asymmetrical peg, so it won't rotate. And there's not much detail here on the inside. We do have a curve, a slight curve in there, so I'm hoping that's going to match across his back nicely. We can see that there is some light showing through there, some nice definition between all of the components. It's not just one big lump there. That's really nice to see. So many fun textures. There's even a sort of different textures looking at the side. This has sort of a slightly sort of pebbled, hammered metal type finish. And then we've got these grills here. Really nice. Okay, got to get him all kitted out. Now I do worry a little bit with backpacks, because sometimes when I'm trying to put accessories in their hands, these can sort of fly off if they're not a particularly deep peg or a secure peg. This one's got a reasonable depth to the peg, but I'm just not sure how well it's really going to grip onto the body. So I'm going to try and sort of just raise his arms a little bit so I can see underneath and see those tiny little sort of little peg cutouts, because I'm going to try and make sure that those straps are going to sort of at least be in the right vicinity there and not folded up underneath. So that's quite a tight peg. I'm hoping that that's really going to sit in there. You can see just how much of his back is covered now. We can see that gap there. I've got the peg in about as tight as I can go. We've got a little bit of a light through at the small of the back there, but of course this is curved. So I'm just going to see. Okay, so looks like we're going to take a little bit of adjustment time to get those little pegs to line up, because it's just a little bit of a fight to get them to line up. And they're very shallow pegs. This one's longer. I feel like that one is going to be an easier sort of peg to get in there, but I'm just going to take a moment to get everything lined up so he looks proper, because I think this is going to take me a few minutes, and then we'll go on to his blaster rifle and blaster pistol accessories. So after spending a few minutes, I think I've got the straps into the best position that I can for my specific figure. This strap here on Dengar's right side, it actually kind of curls in quite tight to the back of the backpack. I wasn't sure how well this one was going to get into place, but surprisingly this one was the easier one to get into place, and it's actually holding its position fairly well considering how shallow that peg hole is, and the end just tucks in nicely under his front of the armor there. Now this one was very hard. Even though it actually looks like it follows quite naturally, I really had to press tight to get this to kind of pull tighter and connect in and tuck under there. But if you look closely at the strap, just pressing with my finger like this to kind of push it in there took some of the paint off, unfortunately. Now this one, it does have a bit of a texture. I thought perhaps this would be cast in a plastic. I wasn't sure if it was actually made as part of the black of the backpack here, but considering how easily the paint came off, this is slightly flexible, so I guess that was a risk. I just wish this had come into position a little bit easier. I know that these little straps are going to vary from figure to figure. I just was expecting this one to be a little bit easier. I also had to sort of pull the front armor out. It was actually quite tight to the body, so I had to kind of flex this corner out to actually get the ends to tuck in there. I know that this paint will probably be completely hidden when I put Dengar's arms down, but that is very unfortunate considering the amount of handling I have to do to get these straps into place. I wish that that had been a much easier, much larger peg. They were so shallow and such a tight, I kind of wish there was just more slack here, so that's easier to do. I shouldn't have to pull really, really tight, because if there's any wiggle with this backpack, that's just going to come out of place, and then I'm going to have to do it all over again. Now he does have a lot of plastic on his back now, so I'm not sure how well he's going to stand up. I do have his arms up. If I put him sort of standing up, he does want to tip backwards, so I think he's going to need some large accessories in his hand to kind of counterbalance that. So I'm just going to lie him down face down, because I really don't want to knock that backpack just yet. We'll take a closer look at his accessories. So starting off, we have a small blaster pistol here. Some really nice detail. We've got some cutouts there beneath the scope. We have an enclosed trigger guard, and we've got the sort of a fun flared shape to the end there. A little bit of a texture to the grip as well. It's a little bit hard to show because this is very small. It's cast in a dark grey plastic with no painted details, but the sculpting details are really nice. There are some really tiny surface details. Really nice to see. So I will test that in both Dengar's hand and in his holster. I do like it when figures have places to stow their extra accessories. If he's going to be holding his long blaster rifle, he probably doesn't have a spare hand to hold this, so I like that he's got a blaster to store this, so I'm not going to lose it. Moving on to his iconic long blaster rifle. This one's really fun. I gotta say, I kind of wish this one was cast in the same plastic as this one. I just like the darker gray plastic for blaster weapons. This one kind of just looks a little bit more plastic because it's in that light gray and it doesn't sort of have a metallic finish. There's just a very, very slight speckle to the plastic, as we get with a lot of those ones. There is nothing that moves on this one. Everything is all fully together. It just looks a little bit more like a toy blaster with some nice detail. We've sort of got some of the cutouts, of course, around here. It would be odd if this was fully filled in. I think that that would be a shame. Some really fine little joints that I'll need to be careful of. That is a very, very tiny piece of plastic. Wouldn't want to snap that. And we do have an enclosed trigger guard, quite small, to be honest. I'm hoping that's not going to prove too tricky to get him to hold. But overall, very nice. It's reasonably straight as well. Sometimes with these long ones, we do get a bit of a bend. There is a slight flex in this plastic, but it's not bendy, mostly just in those sort of narrower sections. It's actually fairly rigid. This one here is a little, this one actually feels just a little bit more flexible despite it being smaller. So pretty cool that Dengar comes with 2 accessories. So I'm really hoping that this doesn't come out of place, but I kind of get the feeling it's going to. So I'm going to test the blaster pistol in his holster here. I really like the sort of the wrinkles of the brown leather on the holster here. Some really nice detail there. The end of the holster is hollow and it is rubbery a little bit there. Of course, we can see that the whole thing flexes there. Let's hope this fits in nice. Oh, that is just a little bit of a tight fit in there. Oh, and then we clip it in like that. That looks really cool. So it's quite a small holster. We've only got a small section there that's actually sort of enclosing the blaster pistol. Most of it is sort of hanging out. We've got the scope just on the outside there and the emitter is down the bottom there, but it does fit in there. It's not going to fall out because you kind of have to push it through. It looks pretty cool. A good place to store that away. Kind of got to pull it out, just this wider part on the emitter just kind of catches there, so it's kind of a nice sort of safety catch. It's not going to completely fall out. So let's test this out. Okay, the grip is going in nicely. Oh, okay, I was worried that his gloved finger might be a little bit too big to fit into that tiny trigger guard, but that does fit. You can see we've got some nice contrast there because he's wearing pale gloves and a dark blaster, and you can see his finger is fitting in that trigger guard really nicely there. Looking very cool. So we're going to be able to do some cool poses with his blaster pistol. That's looking pretty cool. So of course his other hand does not have an enclosed trigger guard, so I don't think he's going to be able to hold this one very well in his other hands. But let's just do a quick test just to see what it looks like. Yeah, you can kind of get it to about there. And because he can't separate his fingers, I can't push it down any further because he's just kind of pushing up against it. He can hold it. That's actually a reasonable grip, but it's just awkward. It's a shame he doesn't have an extended trigger finger because he doesn't really have a staff weapon, but I'm getting the feeling that that is because he's going to do the two-handed sort of under the grip for his blaster rifle. So let's get his rifle in his hands. This is always the tricky part. Sometimes this can take a little bit of wrangling to get these longer accessories into the hands of a Black Series figures. So that is a much tighter grip. And yeah, there is that extra little panel in the trigger guard that his finger is just resting on. I don't know. I will certainly try to see if I can actually get his finger to extend, but I don't think so. He's got quite a curled sort of trigger finger that's separate, but the tip of his finger is resting on that panel. I'm not getting it all the way through. If I do manage to get his finger through there, I will put some pictures up, but for now, that looks like that's about where he's going to be resting. That's kind of interesting. I guess that trigger finger is more for his blaster pistol than it is for his rifle. So of course, with this one, we've got this extra section here that's going to be a little bit awkward to hold on to it. So I'm going to try and just put it on this section here. Just getting his hand. His thumb is very tight on this one. I'm just going to take it out of there, see if I can get this to push past his thumb. This hand I found was quite tight. Okay, let's go. Come on, Dengar. You're going to hold your blaster. Okay, so without getting his finger all the way in the trigger guard, I can get him to hold on to his blaster rifle quite well. Perhaps now that he's got a weapon, he might stand up for me. He still wants to tip back. This is going to take a bit to balance him there. He's a little bit hunched. He has got a little bit of weight on his backpack. I honestly thought that might be a little bit more hollow, but it feels quite solid for the weight of the backpack. And yeah, he might need a bit of help with some blue tack or a stand, because I don't like it when I really have to hunch characters over to make them stand up so they don't topple over. And I really don't like risking my Black Series figures to topple over. I don't want to lose accessories and I don't want to risk breaking them, especially if they've got something small that could snap, like some of the fine details on his blaster rifle here. I don't want to see that hitting the floor from a bookshelf or display shelf, but he doesn't look too bad. I just wish he was a little bit sturdier. If I give him a little bit of a nudge, he does wobble a lot, and I do worry about that. So definitely going to spend some time sort of working on the poses, see if I can find something a little bit more stable. He does have a lot of articulation, a lot of points of tweaking to really find the right pose. pose, but doesn't he look cool? This one was a real surprise. In terms of the details, those shoulder bells caught me out. They are so tightly sculpted. I didn't actually notice that they were a separate piece attached on over the top. That was really cool. Such fantastic paintwork on the whole. I like the weathering down at the front, and of course with his backpack on, he definitely looks more put together and a lot more detail down the back. That looks really cool. I was a little bit annoyed with that strap losing a tiny bit of paint while I was trying to the really best. I'm always very careful with my figures, so that was a shame that paint came off so easily. And of course, it's always a shame when you're unboxing your toys for the first time and something happens like that. It is a little bit disappointing, but of course, he's going to be facing the front, and his arm does a pretty good job of hiding that strap. Just need him to stand up better. I love the face. That's some really cool paintwork on his scars. There we go, got him standing up. Just some really cool details. Now I'm really excited to, complete up my Bounty Hunter lineup and recreate that iconic scene. They may not do much in Empire Strikes Back, but they left a lasting impression, and it's fun to see them have continued adventures across comics and video games and the expanded universe and some of the modern canon stories as well. So really cool. Now I've got to get the rest of them open to finish this lineup because Dengar looks really cool. So some fun aspects to this one, a little bit of adventure trying to put this guy together, and of course I've still got to finesse that pose, but he looks really cool. Just kind of wish I could put his finger in the trigger guard there, but it does have that sort of little extra panel, so I guess that's trying to be sort of more accurate to the original prop there. I can't quibble Hasbro for trying to make the accessories accurate, but he looks really cool. Of course I do have my quibbles with those two peg knees, but we do get some really cool angles. Maybe I'll try to get sort of a kneeling aiming pose with this figure. That might be fun. A slightly different way to sort of pose this one that might counteract the effects of this backpack. But anyway, he looks really cool. I'm really excited to add Dengar to my Black Series lineup. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today as I opened up another Star Wars figure and had a lot of fun and a bit of an adventure checking out all of the details and the accessories. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the galaxy, and let's hang out again very soon for more Star Wars fun. May the Force be with you. If you're a Black Series fan, I recently opened up the Emperor Palpatine archive figure. That video is linked here in case you haven't already seen it, as well as a whole Black Series unboxing playlist. This is the way.